Hello and welcome. You're with the Birth Whisperer, sharing global wisdom for confident childbirth and indeed beyond childbirth. My name is Anna Wild, and today I'm so excited to be talking with you about a subject dear to my heart: wearing your baby in a sling. To be totally honest, when I first heard about this idea, I thought it was weird. I thought I would have a stroller and carry my baby when I needed to, and that would be it. But it was incredible. If you're at all interested in your baby's emotional well-being and giving yourself more freedom as a new parent, you're going to love this interview with Irma Jager. Irma is a friend. She's also an advocate for sling wearing and natural infant hygiene, and that's another story. She lives in the country with her family on a beautiful lifestyle property where they're heading towards self-sufficiency. She's a great inspiration to me, and I'm excited that she can share her wisdom with you today. So welcome, Irma. I'm so pleased that you're here to share your knowledge about wearing your baby in slings today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love sharing those things, even though the kids are, sort of getting older, but I still remember those times. So,
How did you first hear about slings and what did you think?
well, it happened to us when we were introduced to the book The Continuum Concept by Jean Lietloff. We read that book while I was pregnant with Yiba, and it made so much sense, so it was, pregnant with our second, and we could just all of a sudden, there was like a light bulb going on. It's like, that's why Luca wanted to be so close. That's what he was expecting. And then we realized that what we were doing with him was trying to sort of bring two worlds together, like looking after his needs, but at the same time, we were trying to live our life. And sometimes very frustrating because we didn't have a carrier. So we would put him down and then he wouldn't be happy. And, there was a constant juggle. So when we read that book, we realized that, of course, our babies are hardwired to, to expect to be carried, to be close, because it's in our genes, Yeah.
What was it in that book that you learned? What did it tell you that made it seem like, this is what babies really need?
Yeah, for me, the big thing that stood out is that children and babies, when they're born, they're expecting to be the center of activity, but not the center of attention. And that's something that really, really, touched something deep inside me, because I'd seen that in Luca. He wanted to be part of us, but it felt really unnatural to be spending a lot of time just looking after his needs,
Like,
Yeah, just sort of. Yeah.
sitting down on the mat and sort of playing with your baby, or...
Oh, yes, I resented that really with him. At the same time, I didn't know another way. So I think he was, given quite a lot of attention just because that's what people do in our society. They're so happy to have a baby, and this is how they think, by giving them the attention, they can show their love. And then reading the Continuum, I realized actually there's another way that actually felt a lot more closer to my heart.
So tell us about the other way.
Yeah, so the other way is just to have a piece of material, and this is what I did. We went online, and we got the sling, just maybe a week before Yiba was born, and this long piece of material. It was a girasol, yellow sling. I was a bit overwhelmed when I looked at it. It's 4.6 meters long, and like, oh. But there was luckily there was a little leaflet with it, and we started using it when she was a few days old. And I remember when she was, I think, a week old, I had her in the sling on the front. I hadn't seen anybody, in real life carrying a baby like this, so it was all quite new. But here I was making a cake with my 4-year-old walking around, and I had this moment of deep bliss. It's like, here I am. This is what I want to do. I want to have her with me, but I also want to do things, and I want to be with my other child. Mm-hmm. And I look at pictures from those early days, and I realize, the way I put her in, it was quite awkward, and she was really too low, but it still worked. And slowly I got sort of more apt at using it, and we looked a bit more online and found some other ways of tying the sling, and then we were just off, and she was in there literally for 6 months, just non-stop, always on one of us.
And some people might think, my gosh, wasn't that exhausting carrying your baby all the time?
Yeah. Well, I think if you start from really young, they are not that heavy, so it's not really heavy or anything. It can be a bit overwhelming, especially because I'd only read this book, and so it seemed like a theory that that they want to be with you, and so I wanted to carry her until she started crawling and started to create a bit of distance. And sometimes when I got in my head, it's like, oh, this is too hard. But actually, in general, it really felt amazing because I had so much time for myself. She would, they sleep so much. They're really not ready to be, put away from you. And I think also with the movement, they actually, they sleep a lot, well, better, because they have that security. So after 3/4 of an hour, she might have a little wriggle, wake up. And I know that if she had been in a cot or in bed, she would have really woken up. But by being in a sling, she would just look up a little bit and then, okay, and then have another, 3/4 of an hour. So I had a very, very happy, settled, secure baby. And yeah.
It sounds like you were able to just get on with what you wanted to do, which is something that many women struggle with when they're really just carrying their baby around. It's so hard to do things when you've got one arm to do things with and trying to look after this baby and their head is flopping around all over the place. And so wearing the sling gave you a lot of freedom.
It gave me total freedom. Total, and also I think it really helped also the connection between the older sibling and the baby, because I still had time for Luca. If he had something, Mom, come outside, instead of saying, oh, no, the baby is sleeping, I would just run out. I could just go with him because she was on me anyway. And so there was, I think the whole transition for him to have another, a child in the house was much easier.
Right.
Because I think a lot of the times he didn't even realize that, that she was there.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I mean, it's not a huge transition from in the bump into the sling, right?
No, that's right. Yeah. Sure.
Irma, you mentioned that when you received this 4-meter long bit of fabric, it was like, oh, how am I going to do this? And I know so many more people wear slings these days. It's much more common to see it. And there are some quite supportive, more clip-on types of slings that people might choose to wear. But I know it can feel a bit overwhelming when this really is a culturally foreign concept. When people think, well, what type of sling shall I get? And really, do I need one? Can't I just use a stroller? So using a piece of fabric, what advice would you offer about how to do it?
Yeah, well, I think, compared to 12 years ago when we started, I think there's a lot more stuff on the internet. I know that a lot of people have the same passion that I have, and they've put video clips on, which are really, really helpful, really step by step. Is this how you put them in? The other thing is what I did is I think I did my part in starting to import the slings, because I had women around me that said, oh, that looks so amazing, I want one. And so instead of all paying the extra freight, I got a box in and sort of started sharing it. And in the end, I actually ended up doing workshop all over New Zealand by showing people in, with big groups and say, this is how you can use it. And it's, I think it's sort of tapping into that old knowledge. I know that my daughters now, they know how to use a sling. I know that, in 10, 15 years, if they choose to have babies, they'll just know how to use it. And I think I've been sort of a bridge between those old ways of doing that and the knowledge that we have, that we're now, passing that on. And more people have got the knowledge once again.
Yeah. And I know for me that when a friend came over and actually showed me a week or so after baby was born, that was really perfect.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's a bit, some people are okay by doing it through online, but if you can find a person. But there's also in New Zealand, there's quite a few groups like mother groups or even, baby wearing groups that are really there to support you. I know that our home birth group has got a few women in it that they, if you would ask for help, within a day, you would have someone on your doorstep.
Definitely.
Because we all have this, with real passion, because we know it works. Yes. And it can make the difference between a depressed and a mother with an unhappy baby and a mother that is just loving being a mother.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so, yeah.
Irma, just a bit more about the actual practicalities of wearing it. If someone is choosing a sling, thinking about what's going to be best for baby's posture, there's lots of ideas like baby should be lying flat on a bed, how does a sling support a baby?
So from newborn to about 6 months, you have the baby on the front facing towards the mother. It's also an amazing bonding process. The baby can look up at the face of the caregiver, and you have this really strong, connection that's building up. And then by the time that the babies are, wanting to reach out more and look more, then that's the time when you put them on your back. And I think that, the most important thing is that you realize that the knees of the little baby need to be higher than the hips. And with a good sling, you can do that.
Why? Sorry, Irma. Why is that?
Because when the knees are slightly sort of in a sort of a squatting position, there is no pressure on the spine. And this is what is important. And I've actually heard that in hospitals in France where babies are, like premature, they now say, instead of putting them in one of those cubicles, actually carry them in a sling like that. Wow. And have the knees higher than the hips. Wow. And that's a really healthy way to support them.
And what about the concern that babies might suffocate, into their mother's chest or something? Can you give any reassurance or advice about that?
Yeah, well, I think it's the similar thing as co-sleeping. It's for me, it's if you're a happy, healthy mother that is, free of drugs or alcohol or whatever, any of that sort of stuff, there's just no way you're gonna let your baby suffocate when she's on or he is on the front. It's just not happening. But if you tie it well, there's gaps here, and the baby's face will, the baby, if it's a healthy child, it will put its face in a way so that it can breathe. Yeah. And sure. I mean, I've had those times, and it's the same when we started co-sleeping. We were just like, so conditioned to think that, but of course, so the first few nights you're a bit restless and you keep checking, and then slowly you sort of ease into it. So I'm not saying ignore those fears, but just go with it and just gently and just reassure yourself and look at the baby and like, oh yeah, she's fine, So once again, I don't want to rubbish it, but at the same time, I don't want people to say, oh, no, we shouldn't do this because the baby might suffocate.
Right, but I think that when you've got your baby on you, you're really attuned to their breathing and their sounds, and it's like you're right there. You can notice if something's wrong, if they need more air,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's trusting your own mother instinct, I think. And this is for me a big part of the sling, is that you can actually start to trust, what does my baby need? And you're a lot more in tune without spending a lot of time thinking about it, because you just carry on with your life.
That's right.
Yeah.
Great. So anything else you want to offer about what this has given to you and what you see it, not just you, but your children, and what you see wearing your baby giving to other mothers and their children?
Yeah, so I think one thing I'd like to share with parents is that they just, you can't teach a child to become independent. You can't just say to them, okay, you have to be independent. It's something that comes from your heart. And I think we can only, raise independent and grounded and secure children by giving them what they need when they need it. And I've seen it. Our youngest is nearly 10 now, and so we've got 3 children that have been carried all the time, have been co-slept with. They have moved on. They have got their own bed. They do go out. They have sleepovers. They actually, they have this really sort of secure feeling because they've had what they needed. And the sling has been a big part of that, I think, by just allowing them to be with us when they needed it, and then to slowly move on and come back and move a bit further and come back.
Yeah. So you're really making it clear that sling wearing can give your child deep emotional security. And I think research is really backing that up. This is what babies need when they're little so they can be secure grown-ups.
That's right, yeah. So when I once heard someone say a 6-week-old baby, that was put into daycare, and it's like, oh yeah, we need to sort of prepare them for real life. Oh, I cried. I was like, oh my goodness, if this is the attitude, I really see that not working. I see that the opposite is actually and again, and this is why I'm happy that you asked me to share, because our youngest is nearly this age, so I can see, and Luca is 16. I mean, he's a young adult. It has worked. It really has worked. And it was a similar thing with the extended breastfeeding that we did. I remember my dad asking me when Luca was still feeding at 3.5, and he said, oh, he's never going to stop. And I couldn't really relate to that. My dad was concerned because he'd never come across something like this. And so I said to my dad in a joking way, I said, no, he's going to go from my breast to his girlfriend's breast. And so that was the last time he asked.
Some of this ancient global wisdom can seem odd to us as Westerners when we first come across it. The idea of wearing my baby seemed so odd the first time I heard about it. So I'm so happy that we've had this discussion to bring even more normalization to
integrating these fantastic, empowering skills and pieces of knowledge.
Maybe one other thing I'd like to add, I mean, people are very quick to label you. So if they see you with a baby in a sling, they think you're a hippie. It's not, the sort of the completely radical people. It's people that actually realize that they want to raise a child that is going to have a really, wonderful place in society. And so I'd like to, request from everybody to have an open mind. And one of my experiences is walking around with a baby in a sling. Wherever you go, you get smiles on people's faces, and it shows me that really deep inside, we're still this feels right. And there's really people that are so encouraging of it. So
Brilliant.
Mm.
Thank you so much, Irma. It's just been a total pleasure talking with you about this. Many blessings.
Yes. Okay. Thanks.